Good morning. My name is Michael Tucker. I'm a marketing technology consultant that focuses on Marketo at the conversion store. And we've been working inside of Marketo for over 5 years now. I want to share with you something that we've been working on recently and we presented at the Atlanta Marketo user group. And it's all about being able to personalize Marketo content dynamically using local weather conditions. This is something, a topic that's especially relevant these days with everything that's going on with COVID-19 and trying to reopen our economy in a safe way. That also allows you for social distancing, where we might ask a consumer to be able to kind of wait outside in lines where we normally wouldn't have. And so why are we looking into something like this? Well, right now where we're recording this at the end of June 2020, at the beginning of July, we're really still at the beginning of kind of phase two of the reopening process. Some of our businesses have reopened. Almost all of them have capacity constraints and social distancing requirements. And for a lot of our retail chains and a lot of our clients, we're finding that they're running into situations where they don't necessarily have the capacity to fit all of the customers that they normally would have coming to their business. So we ask them to wait outside. And that experience really can have good or bad implications depending on the local weather conditions. So the way that we look at it at the conversion store is, how do we develop Marketo content, nurture programs, communications programs digitally that help us to make that experience so much better for our customers as they're trying to go and do business with our clients. And we think that weather personalization is one of the key ways of being able to do something like that. So when you're talking about weather personalization, part of that conversation is, how do we drive interaction with our different brands, right? How do we create appeals to people, even if COVID wasn't happening right now? We still want to be able to kind of use personalization, use dynamic content, some of the different elements in Marketo, in order to be able to really speak to what people need at that given moment, and be able to use some more adaptive features of Marketo to kind of communicate digitally to people, on a one-to-one basis at scale, which is really the premise of Marketo. How do we manage some of the inconveniences that are happening with being able to wait outside, likewise? And do we risk attrition? Do we risk spots where, if somebody walks away from one of those lines or walks away from some of the safety precautions that we've put in place, will we be able to get them back as a customer? Rather than kind of risk that scenario, what can we do to prevent them from walking away from the location, from the transaction to begin with, by using some of these personalization contents to kind of mitigate some of the risk of attrition? And so when we're thinking about weather personalizations, again, this is irrespective of COVID-19, we look at this and say, well, what does it do in terms of the purchase psychology that happens this is relevant on a B2B standpoint as well as a B2C standpoint. So really, the purchase method that you use, whether you actually make the trip out to a store in the middle of a rainstorm, or whether you plan to use an e-commerce service, or think about a restaurant chain, like a pizza chain, right? How often are you going to have pickup orders versus delivery orders sent out? And your product choice. What is it that you're looking to be able to purchase? We're going to show an example a little later on from the home improvement industry, and really talking about whether you're going to make purchases for outdoor goods for projects that are happening in that space, or whether you're talking about making purchases that are inside the home or inside of the business, if the weather isn't conducive to something like that. And weather personalization really also drives results. So you kind of look at this and say, well, what if I didn't incorporate weather personalization? Is there actually a lift that I get to my engagement, to my bottom line customer base, basically, by doing this? One of the examples that we were able to find in this was Stella Artois doing a personalized weather campaign for digital out-of-home advertising for a site or brand extension that they were doing. And so they really showed that they were only going to make purchases of outdoor advertising during periods of time. This is digitally, so during periods of time where the weather was conducive to that. So, you don't have the reduced visibility of fog or rain. We're only going to make media buys when it's sunny outside. And so what they saw after doing a year's worth of advertising in this is that they had a 65.5 year-over-year jump in their revenue during that period of time. Now, this can also be used. We've been talking a lot about B2C examples up to this point in the presentation. There are also B2B examples, and a couple of these in a lot of different ways are agriculture is an obvious one, being able to kind of do campaigns around some of the supplies that you'd use during planting season, some of the equipment that you might use. Sunbelt Rentals here is an example of a Marketo user in the Charlotte area that would really benefit from being able to personalize their campaigns by weather. Talking about transportation, when does your plane get likely to be snowed out? When is your train going to be to have fulfillment, be able to ship products? Are there delays in that process? What are some of the issues around that? And don't just think about from a passenger perspective, but also think about it from like a shipping perspective as well too. And that's also true of real estate and of shipping from a consumer standpoint. But then think about all of the different B2B products that happen around this as well too, from everything from servicing inside of realtors and all sorts of commercial real estate situations that happen as well too. And so, same parallel to that is just let's talk about new construction as well, right? So it's not just the B2C construction of homes. What about B2B construction of factories and warehouses and office space and all the equipment therein? So think about like the PPE equipment that's being used here, from the hard hats to the fall protection harnesses to the Hilti gun to all of the I-beams that are being produced and the concrete that's here. And the wire rope cables, all of that is impacted. The way that you use each of those products differs depending on the weather at a given job site. So that's important. And then all of the ancillary tools that are used for that. So think about truck beds, think about trailers, think about all the construction equipment, Caterpillar, for example. All of that is helpful. And so there's a lot of different ways that weather really affects all of us. So what we're going to do in terms of our presentation here today, okay, and we want to talk, what we're going to do is we're going to hook Marketo up into a weather data engine, basically. And in this case, we're going to use AccuWeather, which you probably have the AccuWeather app on your smartphone. Well, they actually have a whole API section, and we can actually call the data from that AccuWeather app in Marketo using a webhook. So the process that we're going to go through here is we're going to set up the data source on AccuWeather. It's really simple. You just go to developers.accuweather.com and just sign up for an account. They actually have a free trial that allows you to get a small number of API calls that you can use to kind of debug your Marketo instance. So that part's pretty straightforward. And we're going to walk you through how to set up a webhook to grab your location in the AccuWeather system. And the third piece, we're going to take that data, that location ID that you get from AccuWeather, and actually get the local forecast. And so you can get a 1-day forecast, you can get a 5-day forecast or 10-day forecast. There's a whole series of different examples that you have here, but we're going to keep it really simple for the sake of time and simplicity on here, and just kind of show you the local forecast at a current period of time. And then we're going to talk about how to take that data in Marketo. And what do you do with that? So how do you build out dynamic content that's based on these weather conditions? And what are some of the ways that we could incorporate this into a nurture program? We're actually even going to use an example, again, from the home improvement industry and the retail side of things to be able to show you how this might apply to a larger enterprise. So you've already set up your AccuWeather your account using the process we just described before, going onto their website at developers.accuweather.com. Now, to get the location, you want to set up a webhook inside your Marketo instance. So you'll go to the admin section, you'll go to webhooks, and then you need two different webhooks. So one gets you the location. And so here we have the endpoint that we're going to use inside of that first webhook. And keep in mind, you get assigned an API key when you go to create your account on AccuWeather. So it's different. They keep track of how many requests you make on the API endpoint. And then they bill you accordingly if you go over so many of them. So that we've hashed out our API key here. But then afterwards, you have a second query string parameter. So if if you think about like your landing pages, there's UTM parameter. It's the same sort of thing as using a UTM parameter that you might use in Google Analytics, except this is a different query string parameter called Q, which is asking for the city and the state of the lead. And you can see we have in purple here our Marketo token values against the lead object. It shows city and state that it's plugged in here. You can also use latitude and longitude and a number of other different requests. So you can see that. And so what we get back is we get a JSON response, which stands for JavaScript Object Notation. And don't let the technical part or the fact that this is coming from an IDE, from a coding platform, kind of intimidate you. Really, all we're looking for here is the one value that shows that the key for where we're searching here in Knoxville, Tennessee is 331087. And so we're trying to grab that value because that's how AccuWeather standardizes where it wants to be able to ask for weather forecasts. So what do we do with that information? Well, we save that, we map that back to a custom field in the Marketo database. It's called location key. And here we have our second webhook. And so what that's going to do is it's going to ask AccuWeather and say, okay, we know that we want to ask for this individual lead that is located in Knoxville, Tennessee. Here's a location key that matches your database, not Marketo's, AccuWeather's database. So you know where you're requesting the forecast in case there's, I don't know, a Knoxville, Kentucky or a Knoxville, in England or something like that. So here we put in a different webhook. We also have an API key here, and we're requesting at the location key. We want a one-day forecast. And so what we get returned back off of that is we get another JSON response that has the highlighted information, the headline information, and this kind of matches if you watch the news, and you see the weather forecast, you always see kind of the meteorologist kind of have, okay, here's the overview of what's happening, and we'll dive into specifics on what the high temperature and the low temperature and the probability, all that other information is also included in this JSON response. But for this simple example, we're going to just talk about and pull off the headline information. So here you'll see the category. It looks like there's thunderstorms on this particular day. The text shows that there's thunderstorms in the area this morning through tomorrow afternoon. And then we have a severity code, which just talks about the intensity of that weather, whatever it might be, which is just 3. So we have custom fields, again, in Marketo to be able to save all 3 of those data points that we can use afterwards when we're trying to personalize our marketing creative around that. So you can call this at any given point in time, and AccuWeather is going to grab the local weather conditions at that point in time for that lead and save those back into your Marketo instance so that you're always sending the correct updated information on whatever marketing piece that you're using to within Marketo. So where do we save this here? So I see you've got the three fields. Now what we need to do next off of this, we want it to be dynamic so that the content always changes. It doesn't have to be per se, but it really works better if you put them into a segmentation and then be able to kind of name that weather conditions and then have that update after you run each webhook. Marketo will automatically listen for some of those changes and move the lead. If it's raining in a given week, they'll be in the rain segment. If it's sunny the next week, they'll be moved to the sunshine segment. And that's useful. Even if you don't use this, you can still use the 3 fields that you see here. You see, weather category, weather severity, weather description. you can still use those inside of a smart campaign and be able to set triggers and filters off of those to be able to use that data, the raw data in and of itself. But we want to be able to build dynamic content blocks, and for that you're going to need to have a segmentation. So the other thing to keep in mind here is, because these are all built off of webhooks, webhooks are required to be in trigger campaigns inside of Marketo. And rather than put them inside of the local campaigns and keep having a different webhook for this, a different webhook for that, I like to make sure that we have our webhooks for weather centralized into one operational program that we call weather forecasts. And there's a couple of reasons for this. And the first one is we make them request triggers so that they can be requested by any other program inside of this Marketo instance that's in the same workspace, mind you, and has visibility to it. So there's no problem with being able to use this data elsewhere across a Marketo instance. But if you centralize it, then you make sure that you're always calling the webhook to AccuWeather in the right format. You don't have to go back and reuse this. And you also build in some error handling messages here, because Marketo is sending a message to AccuWeather, and they're asking for information back from AccuWeather. Now, what happens if there's a problem at AccuWeather and due to no fault of Marketo, they don't get a response back in time, but they do need that response about what is the current weather forecast to be able to personalize the email for your client or for your customer. So you want to be able to build factors into your Marketo instance to kind of say, well, if I don't get that information back, maybe I'm going to exclude them from the send. Maybe I'm going to send an alert to my marketing operations manager or the stakeholder within whatever marketing campaign that you happen to be running this off of. So you have a couple of different choices by doing that. But centralizing it helps you to kind of make some fail safes here that you can use to kind of make sure that this operates the way that you want it to. And so inside of here, again, what we're doing is I've got some simple logic to begin with. Just a simple case of where you might have an error is, well, what happens if you call the one-day weather forecast on a lead who has not been searched for their location key in Marketo? Or in AccuWeather, excuse me. So here in all of these forecasts, we always have this if condition, this choice here that says if the location key is empty before you ask for a forecast, check that the location key exists. If it doesn't exist, then you're going to call that first and then wait for the response. You always want to have a wait on your webhooks so that Marketo has enough time to get the response, process it back to your database before you go ahead and then ask for the weather forecast. Okay, so that's the methodology of how we're setting up the webhook to get the information from AccuWeather into Marketo. Here's an example of how you would use this from a commercial standpoint. So, this all looks great, but we want to be able to use this to actually drive dynamic content by weather. And so to do that, we're going to talk about an example using Lowe's Home Improvement. Now, mind you, this is a fictitious example. We don't work with Lowe's. Lowe's is their own business. They may or may not have Marketo, but this is definitely something that is applicable to them or to anybody in the space. I mean, Home Depot could use this as well, to be honest with you, and any other any other chain that's inside of this, the home improvement space could use this as well. But the example that we're going to use here is really a B2C example and really talks about new homeowners. When you go to buy your first home or you go to buy a new home, oftentimes you have a lot of these weekend do-it-yourself projects. And so at Lowe's, we basically built out a drip campaign that basically says, every Friday, we think that consumers, or Saturday morning, we think consumers are going to head into our locations. They're going to buy all the materials that they need to do their projects to improve their home on the weekend. What materials are they going to need? What projects are they going to take on? Well, that is very much dependent on weather. So, we wanted to build a case here. It says, if it's going to be sunny out, we're going to work on gardening supplies or backyard supplies. If it's going to be rainy out, we're going to work on indoor projects, things like maybe tiling or building fixtures for your bathroom or your kitchen, or doing painting or crown molding on your dining room or your living room. So weather very much has a key here. And so what we've done, again, using the same method of building kind of these webhooks that populate custom fields that then populate dynamic content blocks, or segments that then populate dynamic content blocks, is once we have that in place, now we can actually go into an email piece. And here we've taken an email that we built out in a Marketo sandbox and basically personalize that to be able to say, okay, here's an outdoor graphic, here's an outdoor headline, perfect for patio season, here's some copy, here's some suggested cross-sells to our e-commerce site that are all built on outdoor activities. And you know, we mix up what we're offering to people on the basis of what sort of weather that they're experiencing in their location. So if you're in New England and you're experiencing rain, and you're here in Charlotte, North Carolina, and you're experiencing sunshine, you can use the exact same email. You don't have to go back and do any additional creative here, and you can keep sending that week over week to different audience members across the country, around the world, and Marketo will automatically change the content to match whatever their local forecasts are without doing any other changes to this creative. And so just to give you kind of an example, this is the same email, but this is actually now in the rain segment, where now we're making an appeal for them to be able to go do indoor painting as their home improvement project for this given weekend. So we know that this person's probably not going to be outside doing gardening in the middle of a rainstorm. Let's get them something that, you know, puts them into a painting job that they can do. Now you're not, those are examples in email campaigns and email creative, but you're really not limited to that inside of Marketo. So Marketo has the capability to really be kind of the hub and the hub and spoke on an omni-channel campaign. And so here we're showing you an example about how to be able to use this for social media as well too. So, you know, you're communicating to people in all of the different media that they use, whether that's email or maybe that's phone calls. You could send a phone campaign to them, inviting them to an event, which we'll show a little later on. But in this case, we're going to basically filter by social media. So in Marketo has a feature called Ad Bridge, and part of that is that you can actually push your leads in Marketo to Facebook for a custom audience, or to LinkedIn for a B2B client that's looking at a matched audience. And so here we have two different flow steps inside of this program. And one of them is going to go and look for the location key, make sure that that's filled out, and then send out the webhook to get an update for the latest weather condition. And then the next piece that it's going to do is it's going to take a look and at the response it gets back from AccuWeather, and then it's going to put the lead into the right custom audience based on whether it's rainy or sunny out, and sync that over to Salesforce, to Facebook, so that they're getting the right marketing campaign inside of Facebook advertising. So how we do that really is we have this one smart campaign. We have a static list that's set up for each of the different types of weather conditions that we want to be able to segment by. You could put in other conditions as well here too. So it doesn't just have to be by weather. You could mix that up and say, we wanted to send to contractors, professional contractors based on their weather situations. We want to send this to do-it-yourself home consumers based on weather conditions. It can get more complicated or less complicated as your target personas require in your marketing program. But it's up to you. You have the choice to be able to make those changes. And so once those are synced into Facebook, then you have the ability inside of your Facebook Ad Manager account to build out ad sets that are related to indoor or outdoor weather conditions. So here's a couple of Lowe's examples that we were able to get from Facebook that just kind of talks about, okay, here's a campaign to be able to go through and upgrade your shower in your bathroom. But definitely an indoor project, definitely something you do in rainy or snowy conditions. Contrary to that, if you have sunny conditions, you know, you want to put those people in those marketplaces or those geographies into outdoor conditions so that they can get appeals about patio furniture. So it's really customized in Facebook, and all of this is being powered by Marketo. So the other piece too is let's talk about events and how you might be able to customize some of those. So how do you see events inside of Lowe's Home Improvement? Well, typically they, will have different types of sessions or learning educational moments. I know the Home Depot does this a lot as well too, where they'll say, okay, well, you're going to do a weekend project and we think it's going to be on, outdoor patios. And so we'll bring in an expert to be able to talk about being able to build a deck on your backyard and being able to do things like wood staining or how to build out the perfect grill. And we'll have some of the grill suppliers, provide examples where we'll go out and do a barbecue at a location, and show you how to use the product. Or if you're a professional contractor, here's a way to be able to do appreciation days for professional contractors. They come into the store at a different point in time. But they also would have a different treatment of what you're going to offer them based on the weather conditions at any given point in time about what sort of projects that they're working on, whether it's the exterior shell of a project or a design build project where they're working on the inside of a construction project. And so here we've gone ahead and we built out, two different event programs that invite them to either a contractor appreciation event or a do-it-yourself weekend workshop. And so within each of those event programs, you can also build in email content in here, so like an invitation or a phone campaign or an SMS message or what have you, and have that all built off of weather personalization as well. And then you can place that in with the first two examples we gave about social media content and email content and put that into a nurture stream. So the nurture streams themselves, you see we have two different ones that talk about different target audience personas, weekend projects and professional contractors. And that's very much based on the other segmentations you might have in your Marketo instance about demographic and firmographic information and behavioral information, and all of that can be used to build out those segments as well that kind of talk about who should go into which nurture stream. Now, mind you, again, all of this is the same content. So, this is evergreen in the sense that your offers are going to be the same. What you offer is going to dynamically differ by each business, by each location, excuse me, and the weather that's happening in that location. So a fourth media, and you can, your media is not limited by Marketo. It's really, Marketo is parsing out the information and kind of sorting out who goes into what weather condition. And then you could send those to different, all sorts of different marketing partners. So, if you wanted to, let's say that you had out-of-home advertising that you're using for your specific brand, or you have a telemarketing agency that you work with, and you can split up lists to be able to send out to those people and say, here's who I want you to be able to contact in this given point in time. So let's say that Lowe's wanted to do some display advertising. We could set up Marketo to be able to pass the information to demand service platforms that basically control an inventory of advertising spaces that you might be able to place Lowe's advertising on. So, within that platform, that's sort of outside of Marketo scope, but within that platform, you'd be able to see, okay, Marketo has sent me 250 people in this market, 190 people in this market, and here's the weather conditions that are split up by each of them. Now I know as the ad manager for that display ad, I'm going to do creative about indoor projects or outdoor projects in this market and in this versus this position. One of the examples that we do know that Lowe's does is something kind of similar to this in their Manhattan and their New York City marketplace. Their stores there, not a lot of space that's available on the island of Manhattan. And so to be able to make the most out of the square footage inside of a Lowe's home improvement stores, they set up a series of display areas to be able to offer different types of products in their stores. So, if you scale that out and you offer these display units in other markets as well, so let's say that they move to other markets that have a tighter region. So think like downtown Chicago or other large metropolises where they also have that square footage area. And a lot of other retailers are doing this as well too. You then also have the same sort of methodology where you can go ahead and send information about what offers you're going to display at what stores at any specific given point in time, and then pivot that based on your weather. So there's a lot of examples of way to be able to use this in your marketing campaigns. So just talking a little bit about, how do you use this? So, okay, great. This all sounds great, but how do I make use out of this? Well, what we've done at the Conversion Store is to be able to build out a white paper for you to be able to get the details on how we implemented this as well. And we hope that this video serves as a good instructional piece for you as well too. But if you want to get more information, you can go to our website. It's conversionstore.com/weather. And we'll provide you more information there. And we'll put a link in this video as well for you to be able to click to that. And the other piece too that we mentioned during the Marketo user group is if you like this content and you want to be able to get more information about other ways that Marketo certified experts and a lot of the members of the champion class are using Marketo and a lot of different learning resources, we have cooperated with a lot of the other Marketo user group leaders. So I run the manufacturing user group virtually, across the globe for Marketo. We have a number of other different users who are using, are producing content in Chicago and in Atlanta and in New York and all over the world, in England and in Japan and Australia, what have you. If you go to conversionstore.com/video, you can go to our YouTube channel that's shared with all of them. And also, feel free to reach out to me directly. I'd love to chat with you more about this. We're always available to be able to help. We love working on different Marketo instances and making really complicated things in Marketo simple for our clients to be able to use and make money off of Marketo instances. So number for me is 704-469-5137. It's +1 area code and country code in North America. We're here in Charlotte, North Carolina. Or you can email me at michael@conversionstore.com. So that's MICHAEL at conversionstore.com. And feel free to visit our website as well and take a look at some of our blog articles. We have a lot of different content on there over the work that we've done in Marketo over the years, and we'd love to be able to work with you. Thank you so much for your time, and I look forward to answering any questions that you have, and wish you all the best being able to personalize your Marketo instance to the weather. Thank you again.